Audio Jungle.
Greetings to the viewer. Today we are going to see about plastic pollution and what we are doing about it. Here we refers to the countries of the world because they have the duty to do something about it. It needs a big step to be taken by the government itself. So let's start from how the very first plastic was produced. John Wesley Hyatt it was who invented a synthetic polymer in 1869. So he invented the process of making celluloid. Celluloid is the very first synthetic plastic developed, and this took place between 1860s to 70s. Although this material was already developed and even used earlier, it was Hyatt who wanted to commercialize this material. Hence, Hyatt is credited for developing a commercially viable celluloid, and that is also very friendly for manufacturing. And then he patented the process of making it in the 1870. So Leo Baekeland then, after almost 3 decades, he develops another type of material for the mainstream commercial purpose. The thing with plastic is that there are so many types of plastics for different uses. For example, you can see right around you the different kinds of plastics. The plastic used for electronic purposes to make electronic goods, those plastics are a little different from the single-use plastics. For example, carry bags, because some are very flexible and some are very hard. So these different kinds of plastics were discovered, they were invented by different people and was even patented by them. This is what developed the research in plastic and the plastic industry itself. Um, every investor wanted to pool their money and resource into plastic research so they can develop new plastics and sell them in the market for good money. And that's how the plastic created a market for itself. In the 1920s, plastic entered the mainstream commercialization at the main market, as an actual commercial good. And in 1940s, the market reached its peak because so many people saw it as a beneficial, a potentially, um, a potentially good market which will give them good returns. And in 1950s to say 2012, the market has been developing in a rapid pace and it is just unstoppable. So researches on plastic uh, was at its was pampered by businessmen and investors so much, and the interest in plastic, the this big interest in plastic is what attracted the government. It is what called the government to make federations and organization in order to regulate this. And the British Plastic Federation, one of the very first federations formed for this purpose, and the Plastic Industry Association, all of them were created, they were made, and these groups regulate the plastic industry in their respective countries. So where we are now, about that, new types of plastics, there are so many types of plastics that were invented after that, and now currently we have 13 types of commodity plastics. Commodity plastics mean the one which are already in the market, the one which is used for the commercial purpose, to make commercial goods, the one which reaches the common man. And about 16 types of special plastics, these are used for special purposes uh, uh, such as government funded closed researches and all that. It just simply means the plastic which does not reach the common man, which is not commercialized yet. So there are 16 types of special plastics, and in 2016 a report was published which said that the global market for plastic is estimated to be about $1.1 trillion, and it was also expected to grow to $1.2 trillion by 2020. This is the accurate representation of the real scene, because on the one hand the plastic industry is unstoppable and it's growing in rapid pace. And then on the other hand, so is the plastic pollution, because we do not really know, and we do not really have the right means of plastic waste management. Since the plastic pollution was spotted, which we're going to see in the next slide, and the world is now, right now, about the current situation. Right now, the plastic free environment is a trend among people. Now, why it is the need of the hour is because in 1997, which is almost 20 or more than 20 years ago, Charles Moore, an oceanographer, he spotted the Great Pacific garbage patch. He says that he happened to spot that, this huge island of plastic waste when he was returning from another assignment, and that inspired him to make a photography project and submit reports and take initiatives and bring it to the view of the world. um, Hence he brought media attention to it, the mass media attention to it, because he took a photography. He also happened to be a photographer, and he took a photography project specifically for this purpose. And so many countless initiatives were taken since then for the past 20 years now. Notably, the Algalita Marine Research Foundation, which was founded by Charles Moore himself, and Plastic Pollution Coalition. This is one huge NGO, because it is not just one body. It is a coalition of different bodies, from the very small organizations to the big shots. And the plastic bank. This plastic bank is very important because they took a different approach towards the control of plastic pollution, because they have set up their booths in different countries, different places, with the approval of the governments, and they started distributing goods and money in exchange for plastic waste. They get plastic waste from people, and they give them commodities or money for it. And then there is the National Geography Initiative. National Geography recently, as we know, it took the Planet of Plastic project, which showed really powerful images. It is a photography project, and it showed really, really powerful images which depicted the actual scene of plastic pollution, mainly involving marine lives. For example, turtles and seagulls consuming plastic or stuck in plastic nets and plastic bags. So this made why this uh, photography project is important is because everyone saw it. It reached everybody without exceptions. It was on TV, it was on radio, it was on the internet, it was all over the internet, and there were hashtags which were also trending on Twitter and other places, because of National Geography's fame and all. It reached everybody. Then the marine pollution, it has reached its peak. Recently, there was a video of a straw being pulled out from the nostril of a turtle, which made rounds on the internet, because it was very touching, and it was very sad, and it made a profound impact on people. And there is the problem of microplastics also. Microplastics is this plastic which is not quite it cannot be spotted that easily, because as the name suggests, it is micro. They are very small pieces of plastic. And why the problem is said to be worse is because these really small plastic pieces are found in the floor of the ocean, the depths of the ocean. And the depths of the ocean has these microplastics in them, the very floor of the oceans. So let's come to the real initiatives, the real action taken in the international arena. The Basel Convention. As we all know, the Basel Convention is the control of transboundary movements of hazardous waste and their disposal. There are 187 parties to it, and notably, the in United States is not a party to the Basel Convention. This convention is an agreement on disposal of hazardous waste. Basically, the developing countries or the dump sites for the developed countries to dump their hazardous waste materials in there. Um, this convention has different schedules which has listed out what the hazardous materials are. These include radioactive materials and all that. But okay, radioactive materials have a different agreement, but then there are certain substances which are very toxic and they will be dumped in the shores of the developing countries, which is very hazardous to the people living there, which makes a which hence depleting these people's surroundings and environment. Hence, in order to curb this, the Basel Convention was made, it was drafted. It is an agreement in order to control and regulate the movement of hazardous waste from the developed countries to the developing countries in order to safeguard these weak countries' interests. So, the reason for bringing Basel Convention into the scene is because there are certain types of toxic plastic waste that are also disposed of into the oceans. The main dump sites here are the oceans. There are landfills also in these developing countries which are filled with waste, but then the oceans are the main dump sites here. And the adverse effect of dumping toxic plastic waste in the ocean is that the marine life will be affected by this. And by marine life, we don't just refer to the moving animals like turtles, dolphins, whales, but also the coral reefs and other plants and other creatures in the ocean. So that's why the Basel Convention needs to add these toxic plastic waste also in the list of hazardous waste. The Geneva Meetings, as we know, Geneva Meetings are considered for taking are conducted for taking international decisions on global crisis. This is a global crisis, and it is already too late to conduct Geneva Meetings, but at least we did. So, in the international arena, in the the United Nations body, it is the United Nations Environment Assembly which has to take the main decisions regarding the environment problems and crisis. So the first Geneva meeting was held on December 2018, which hosted officials from 180 countries even back then, and there was an ad hoc court held for hearing the sides of various parties. Then on May 2019, a second meeting was conducted in Geneva, which was also attended by 180 states, and these are the parties to the Basel Convention. This meeting focused mainly on the export of plastic. By export of plastic, we mean the export of plastic waste too, and curbing of toxic plastics in the destination countries, which is exactly what we were talking about in the previous slide. And the two main aims of the meeting are to control plastic waste trade and to work on the public private partnership on waste management. This public private waste management is called for because it is not just the private entities which can curb the plastic waste, but also the governments. The government has to aid, it has to do something about it, because that is how much plastic waste we have right now in our on our earth. So the developing countries, the first world countries, notably the USA, which is unfortunately not a member of the Basel Convention, it ships its hazardous waste to the developing countries, namely Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and all that. In 2018, China took a very big step by by placing a ban on the imports of plastic waste materials. What was going on in China before 2018 was that it used to receive humongous amounts of plastic waste, which the developed countries used to export to China for saying for the purpose of recycling these plastics. But the truth is, the developing countries do not really have the means to recycle that much of plastics. We do not have the means to do it because we do not even have the means to dispose of the plastic waste that is generated in the developing southeastern Asian countries. So the proposed amendment for Basel Convention is focused on the right to refuse it. So the problem here was that the what went wrong here is that the developed countries can export their waste to these sites, which are the developing countries, in the name of in the name of recycling it without even obtaining their real consent. There are a lot of illegal export of plastic and other waste which were exported. So this Basel Convention, the amendment proposed for the Basel Convention will bring a strict procedure that must be followed in order to export and import plastic waste. What is the reason for the delay? So plastic pollution is at its peak. Before 2 decades, we came to know of the plastic pollution, but then we just kept dragging it along, and there was no international convention or not even a meeting held for this purpose. Only the NGOs were screaming a throat out about the crisis. So, why this is so is because we are so used to plastic now that can you imagine a plastic free everyday life? No, because it is everywhere. Plastics are everywhere, all around us. And it even seems to be utopian, a very unrealistic idea to get rid of plastic fully. And what would the $1 trillion industry do with it if plastics are all banned? So this is what caused the delay in it. The governments are caught up between the rising plastic waste and the giant plastic markets with all the big businessmen. So uh, there's only so much the government can impose. There's only so much control the government has over the economy. It is mainly in the hands of the businessmen, and plastic is a very big industry, bigger than what we can imagine. And countries like USA are very non-participant in these things. Like we already know that USA has not really is not really active in the global warming crisis and the other things. Just like that for plastic waste management, also the US is quite dormant. It just stays away and sees what the process are. It is not a participant in the Basel Convention, but it has signed it, but it has not ratified it. So hence this crisis. And what is India done about plastic? So after the UN meetings, during the UN meetings actually, India expressed its strong objection on dumping of plastic waste in Southeast Asian countries. It was very much against it, and the Indian states have now banned single use plastics. For example, the states of Delhi, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Himachal Pradesh, and other states that you can see on the slides have brought a ban on single use plastics. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, has very confidently told the international arena that that is in 2022, the use of single-use plastics will be phased out completely. Let's just hope for the best. And the banning of single-use plastics in different states in India. Indian states have their freedom to control their own market, their own business policies. So these countries have different kinds of impositions. These countries have different kinds of regulations when it comes to the ban of single use plastics, because they cannot abruptly stop the use of it. The most of the economy also depends on these plastic manufacturing companies. Hence The national wide step that was brought for the purpose of curbing plastic waste management is called the extended producer responsibility. It is a public private waste management system. The thing is, all the companies which are producing plastic materials has to obtain the prior consent of the state governments, the local authorities of the state to do it. And in order to manufacture it, the companies have to submit a full report on how they will dispose of the waste that is generated by the manufactured plastic. And without the submission of this report, the local authorities can take action on the company, and they cannot manufacture the plastic. So these kind of stringent measures taken by the state have made quite a difference. It just will take a few years to see how it is actually being implemented and how it is actually effective. So this is all about the plastic pollution control in India, and thank you so much.